You're about to learn a psychological truth so dark, it's been operating quietly inside every relationship you've ever had. The principle of least interest. It says, the person who cares less, who could walk away without losing sleep, holds all the power, and not just a little power. Total, decisive, devastating. It was first described in 1938 by a sociologist watching couples on a college campus, and since then, neuroscience has proven that your own brain hands control to the less interested partner every single time. Now, you might think you're too smart to fall for this. You read psychology, you've been to therapy, but the principle is structural. It's baked into the architecture of human social exchange. Richard Emerson, the great power dependence theorist, proved it mathematically in 1962. A's power over B equals B's dependence on A for the things B values. That's not poetry. That's algebra. And when you love someone more than they love you, you become the dependent variable in their emotional equation. Let me give you the rope analogy. Imagine two people standing on opposite sides of a bottomless chasm, each holding one end of the same rope. The one who is terrified to let go, the one who cares deeply about staying connected, that person has to follow every tug, obey every demand, because the rope is their lifeline. The other, they can drop it at any moment. That cold, casual grip, that's power. And in relationships, the rope is made of texts, plans, promises, shared memories, all the emotional supply you trade. This isn't just theory. A 2008 study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology looked at 120 real-world couples and discovered a chilling pattern. The partner with lower emotional investment consistently got their way in decisions: where to eat, how to spend money, even intimacy rhythms. And they also reported being happier with the power distribution. The one who cared more didn't even realize they were being systematically outmaneuvered. Their brain was too busy trying to secure affection to notice it was losing autonomy. Dig deeper, and evolution slaps you in the face. Parental investment theory, from the legendary biologist Robert Trivers in '72, says that in any species, the sex that invests more in offspring, in humans, historically women, has more to lose from a bad mating decision. This created a primeval template where men could afford to care less about any single prospect. That ancient calculus still echoes in our neurocircuitry, making indifference seem like confidence and availability seem like desperation. Now, here's where it gets terrifying. Neuroscientist Helen Fisher, in her groundbreaking 2005 fMRI study, discovered why the less interested person becomes a neurological obsession. The dopamine-rich ventral tegmental area, the craving center of your brain, lights up like a casino when you get an uncertain positive response. Intermittent reward, the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. A partner who is warm one day and cold the next literally chemically enslaves your brain, while they remain calm, unaddicted, and in total control. Skinner knew this back in the 1950s with pigeons. Reward them every time, they get lazy. Reward them randomly, they become obsessed. In human dating, the relationship becomes a Skinner box. You check your phone obsessively, you reread their vague text, you craft the perfect reply, and every time they toss you a breadcrumb of attention, your dopamine spikes, reinforcing the cycle. The avoidant partner's brain, however, stays in homeostasis, giving them perfect clarity, strategic control, and zero emotional cost. Attachment theory maps this with brutal precision. When an anxiously attached person, someone who desperately craves closeness, pairs with a dismissive avoidant who fears intimacy, the power dynamic is pre-written. The anxious partner's fear of abandonment increases their dependence every day. They become the psychological servant, scanning constantly for threat, while the avoidant partner, who could walk away without emotional ruin, becomes the puppet master. The 2014 personal relationship study proved the one with the lower threshold for leaving wields significantly more decision-making power. Now, I want you to stop and think for a moment. Have you ever been on the high investment side of this equation? Felt that sinking weight of unreturned calls, the pleading for clarity, the constant monitoring of their mood? If so, drop your story in the comments right now. Be honest. When did you first realize you were the one who cared more, and what did that cost you? I read every comment, and I promise, your story will resonate with thousands of others who are watching right now, trapped in the same silent prison. Modern dating apps have weaponized this principle. The scarcity illusion, studied by Robert Cialdini, shows that we assign higher value to what seems unavailable. When you reply instantly, you signal high availability. When you're aloof, you become the coveted commodity. Algorithms literally reward profiles that project indifference because ambiguous engagement drives swipe activity. The result? An entire generation learning to feign disinterest, curating an emotional avatar that feels powerful but is slowly starving their capacity for genuine intimacy. But here's the real horror. Weaponizing disinterest has a dark cost. Research on emotional suppression shows that chronically faking indifference causes emotional burnout, depression, and a fragmentation of the self. You become a prisoner of your own coldness. You can't selectively numb. When you kill your capacity to care deeply for someone, you also kill your ability to feel joy, wonder, and authentic connection. You win the power game but lose your own humanity. And that's a terrifying transaction. Gottman's research nails this. The partner who has emotionally checked out controls the emotional climate because they set the temperature of the withdrawal. He found this pattern predicts divorce with over 80% accuracy. It's the silent treatment taken to existential levels. One person's indifference becomes the entire relationship's architecture, trapping the caring partner in a house of mirrors where they constantly adjust themselves to please a ghost. In negotiation science, this is the BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. When you know you can walk away and still thrive, you hold the table. Pixar versus Disney in 2006 is the perfect corporate mirror. Pixar had a booming film slate and could walk away from the deal. Disney needed them desperately. Pixar got unprecedented creative control. The principle is universal. Whether it's a boardroom, a bedroom, or a battlefield, the less you need the deal, the more you dictate its terms. But let's pivot to the counter-truth that can save you. Brené Brown's work on vulnerability shows that the deepest, most resilient connections come from risking caring more, not less. The people who embrace the possibility of being the one who loves intensely, with no guarantee of return, often end up with richer, more authentic lives. They refuse to let the principle of least interest dictate their humanity. And paradoxically, that genuine, non-needy openness can reset the power dynamic because it comes from strength, not hunger. So where does that leave you? Not numb, not manipulative, but aware. The Stoics didn't advocate indifference to people, they practiced indifference to outcomes. You can care deeply about someone while maintaining a healthy disinterest in controlling the outcome of the relationship. When your sense of self-worth isn't dangling at the end of someone else's rope, you aren't signaling emotional negligence, you're radiating contented self-sufficiency. That's the ultimate power. You're interested, but you don't need. How do you convert that into real life? First, audit your emotional investments. Who are you spending hours thinking about who doesn't give you the same energy? Start reallocating that mental real estate toward your own projects, your physical health, your friendships. Every time you catch your brain manufacturing a fantasy about someone who is lukewarm, invest that thought in yourself. It's not about becoming cold. It's about heating up the right fire, the one that burns from within. Next, recognize the intermittent reward trap in real time. When you feel that anxious dopamine spike waiting for a message, label it. This is my brain on gambling mode. That naming alone activates your prefrontal cortex, giving you a sliver of cognitive control. Then do the opposite of what your craving demands. Put the phone down, go for a walk, cook a meal. Starve the loop. The craving will scream louder initially, but that's the extinction burst. Ride it out, and you'll break the chains. There's a profound psychological immune system you can build. The moment you realize that someone's indifference is just an evolved strategy, not a measure of your worth, you reclaim your power. You aren't the victim of their aloofness. They're a player in a game you can now see. And when you step back, you often observe that the person who cares less isn't actually free. They're just as trapped in their own emotional lockdown, unable to access the deep connection you're capable of. The meta-analysis from 2021 confirms, across cultures, lower emotional investment correlates with perceived power. But it doesn't predict happiness. The person with the power is often not happier, just more comfortable. Meanwhile, the one who cares deeply, even when it hurts, reports more meaning, more growth, and over a lifetime, richer stories. So the principle is real, but it doesn't own your destiny. You can learn to care intensely without giving away your soul.